Crazy Stupid Podcast.
If this is your first time watching, we'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button, the like button, and the bell so that you are aware of when we post things.
Alrighty. Hello and welcome.
Just a preface. We've got 2 episodes that we're sort of putting together today because we didn't get a chance to finish and upload last week's episode.
We had festivities that interrupted the recording session. It was
30
delightful.
years old. I'm old now, yo.
And a little surprise.
Gray hair right here. Can you see it?
Do you really?
Yeah.
A little salt and pepper. Okay, man. This finally felt like this is what we've been building to. Like this was a pivotal moment.
For Yuji?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All of this background, all of this stuff that we've been doing, all of these characters that we've met and lost along the way, all of this prep work that's been happening for these past couple seasons, it feels like all of it was for this tonight. The reason why I was like, we need to record right away, usually the way that Yuji is animated or drawn is very different from Sukuna. Like not just the different, like obviously Sukuna has like the tattoos and like the extra like eyes and mouth
Like
and stuff.
physical structures.
But like,
different.
yes, like something about his face itself, there's like a softness and a kindness that the animators, I don't know what they do, but I always see it and it goes away as soon as Sukuna comes. Like even in addition to all of the actual physical changes, there's like something else. I don't know what they do. Animators, major props to you because it's like very subtle, but it's very impactful.
Yeah.
And the way that they animated Yuji in this episode as the fight went on, he looked more and more like Sukuna. Down to his cuts were like in places where Sukuna's markings are, like the little, when he got a cut right here and like his mouth area, and you could like see his teeth, and there was like one right here where like sometimes the other eye is, and the gash. Like I just cannot give enough props to the illustrators for this because it was so subtle but like so impactful. Like I could not see it. Like it was on my mind the entire time as the fight was going on. And then when it gets to the end, when he's about to exercise Mahito, it's like just full force. Like if it wasn't for the fact that he does not have the tattoos and everything, I would think that was Sukuna. Everything about his presence was completely different.
Body language. Oh
and
my God.
I just feel like it's showing this loss of innocence, obviously, because Yuji this entire time has sort of had this innocent and maybe like naive outlook on life and on the whole war and conflict with the curses in general, and on what pieces of his own self and humanity he'd be able to hold on to, and what sort of moral standards and ethical standards he'd be able to hold himself to. And in this fight, I think he just sort of comes to, I don't want to say realization because I don't necessarily know if this is like correct, but he comes to believe that he can no longer hold on to those pieces of himself. And I think for him, the pieces of himself that he thinks separates him from somebody like Sukuna or Mahito, he sort of is like, I am now resigning to the fact that I can no longer hold on to these in order to play what he calls my role in this war. And so it's like a physical manifestation they're showing us through the illustration of how he is starting to see himself because of what he is conceding in this fight with Mahito.
Season 1 Yuji is gone. The Lost in Paradise dancing Yuji, like I don't think we're going to get him back.
No.
And it feels very sad that Yuji finally got his look back, and I'm hyped for that. But at the same time,
I didn't feel that sense of relish that I would.
No, because this is what Nanami and Gojo were trying to avoid, of like the youth taken away from these kids. And that is what the Shibuya arc kind of did for Yuji. He saw so much loss, so much trauma, and it forced him to grow up a lot quicker than he was supposed to. The Shibuya arc so far feels like this culminating moment of the point that the writer for the manga is really trying to get across, of like, when you have these structures and these systems in their world, you've got sorcerers who are trying to exercise curses, and these solutions that they have are like temporary fixes. In most instances, it's young people and kids who are often the casualties of what happens. I was excited to see Mahito in that state, it felt like a little finger moment when Sansa finally got her revenge, and like he like drops to the floor because he's out of options and he knows it and he's desperate. But I felt there was a sense of sadness for Yuji that I'm like, we're not gonna get season 1 Yuji, like that kid's gone, and that's kind of sad because he was so delightful.
See, I did not feel bad for Mahito, but I did feel pity.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
think that this is still kind of going back to this idea of like humanizing the curses, because I mean, when Yuji finally says like, you're right, like I am you, I am like you, and what he's essentially saying is like, yeah, you're right. The same way that you kill humans, I kill curses. And he's equating the two things. And I feel like, to me, what that sounded like, that conversation, was sort of like an acknowledgement of the fact that what I am doing is not any better than or worse than what you are doing. It's just that we are naturally opposed beings and species that cannot coexist, and we have landed on two opposing sides of this war and this conflict. And so to protect me and my own, I'm doing what I have to do. That's what he said. This is my role in this war, is to kill curses. And you are doing what you have to do too. To me, he didn't sound like he was saying like, because this is the right thing to do. To me, it sounded like he is acknowledging that this is not a right versus wrong situation. This is just a we versus them.
It is what it is.
And that's what it is.
Yeah.
That is like I mean, you're essentially saying like the bad guys are only bad because they're not us.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of it. And even as a human watching the show, that's it. The bad guys are only bad because they're not us. Because the same way that they are killing humans, humans are also killing curses. But it's just that we're on the side of humanity because we're human beings. Even like Mahito's whole journey, obviously, like I do not like him. He's very insufferable. But his entire arc was self-discovery, which is a very human experience. His entire thing was to truly know oneself, to know the shape of his own soul, to truly know who and what he was and is and what his purpose is on this earth. That is a very human experience. And the second that he found it, he also was faced with the experience of his own mortality, of seeing his own mortality, which is also a very human experience, of being faced with the notion that like I am finite, like I'm not here forever, and life is much more fragile than I thought. It's kind of just goes to show like this is just not as it's not as simple as it's felt in the first couple of seasons, and they've done that with the deaths of all of the curses in this Shibuya arc, in their dying moments. I mean, we don't know if Mahito's about to, we don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but he believes it's his dying moments. In those moments, they are showing us that they are experiencing this moment the same way we do. Yeah.
They've done it more from the perspective of curses, and I love that intentionality that they've done.
You guys talk about my guy Todo. Damn.
Yo, Todo is that guy.
Damn.
Todo is that guy, bro.
Yo.
He is that guy, bro.
I have nothing else to say. Like, I'm really happy he lived. I'm very happy he's alive. I am sad that his ability, like, he can't use that anymore. I think that's like tragic, but like what a way to go. Like what a way to go out. He cut off his own arm.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about like and he didn't think twice. He didn't have a moment where he was like, but if I do this, I won't be. No, he was like, it's gone. I don't care the cost. That's crazy. That's so respectable to me. That's very admirable. And I have mad respect for him. I just, wow.
That's a ride or die.
Yeah.
100%. a little delusional, but like, I feel like you need that kind of loyal friend that's like, bro, hell or high water.
Unearned, like completely unearned. Like there's just like...
Literally just their interest in the same women.
Yeah.
It literally brought him to tears. That was like, this is the most unhinged man that I have ever seen. Ever.
But I appreciate that he's like a serious threat though, because like when you first meet him, it's kind of like this goofy ass, like what is this guy?
I mean, the way that he spoke to people, I could tell he wanted nobody to like be trifled with. You know what was interesting? I saw someone point this out on Twitter when he's in his little constellation going, crazy in his head, and you get all these like quick flashes. Obviously he's like delusional in creating these like scenarios in his head like he did in season 1, but there's one where Yuji is with him and his classmates at the Kyoto school, which to me is like, one, that's like super endearing, but two, makes me think that like he's probably kind of lonely. Like it doesn't really seem like they like him that much. You know what I mean?
Do they like each other, like, for real? Like, I feel like their whole vibe is just off at that school.
I think we probably need a little bit more time spent with him, which it looks like they're kind of hinting at. We'll probably get a little bit more, which I'm very interested in learning more about them, because the most we've gotten is Miwa and Mekamaru, but even that was like just a couple of scenes here and there, you know.
I did have thoughts about, it's not like fully fleshed out, but okay, so after Mahito unalives
Kugisaki, yes.
Both you and I were like, all right, let's go, Yuji. Let's go. And like we were like expecting him to just like go off, like just go crazy. Like the rage just fill him and he's just like, and they're just gonna like let him have it. That was like my expectation. Because I feel like that is normally what would happen. Is that like you would just see a character, something terrible happens, they're just angry, and then like without even thinking they just go crazy. And I liked what they did, where instead of doing that, they had Yuji like break down. Like he literally broke down and was like unable to function. And it wasn't until he had somebody in his community come in and call him in and be there for him and pull him up that he was able to get up and do what he needed to do. And I like that so much better than what I was expecting, because usually you do need somebody else to come in and pull you up. And so I like that instead of focusing on like just Yuji like all of a sudden stepping into like his full potential and just going crazy from this traumatic experience. No, it's not that. It was having somebody who cares about him come in and step in on his behalf and protect him, and then give him the strength that he needed, and the time that he needed to be able to step into this with him, not by himself.
That ties very neatly with that reoccurring theme of community that shows up often in the show. In Yuji's moments, like these big moments where he has these fights, there's always a moment of near defeat when he tries to do it by himself. And then someone who's closest to him not only helps save his life, but helps him become like not just emotionally stronger, but like in his curse technique and ability become stronger as well. Like earlier in season 1, when he fights Mahito for the first time, there is a moment where Mahito could have like ended Yuji, and then who shows up? Nanami pulls up, right? And then that's where they start to fight a little bit more, and it's in that moment where Yuji realizes that he has the ability to break through a domain, right? And then you see even later on in some of these other fight scenes, you fast forward to this season, he wasn't really doing much against Mahito until Kugisaki comes in and does her technique, and then he says,
you made me feel like I'm not alone.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then he's able to like up, his strength even more.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen Yuji do a black flash until way back in like when he was with Todo the very first time, right? And then what happens? Todo pulls up. Yuji realizes he's not alone again, and then he's able to do that black flash. There hasn't been anyone who's really been able to
just go it alone.
Right.
That's true.
Which I very much like that theme that has been tied so intricately throughout the entire show so far, which we talked about this last time when Maki gives that example in JJK 0 where she talks about like the more curses commune together, the weaker they are. And she says the same thing can be said about humans. And I love how the show keeps proving her wrong without anyone having to explicitly tell her as that character. The voice actor for Mahito is incredible. I know we've talked about this off air of like there is a very specific skill set that comes with voice acting. It's not something that like any actor or any person can do, because there's a lot of story plot that is implied with the way that you're voice acting. In the previous episode, the way that Mahito was expressing himself, or the way the voice actor was expressing Mahito, to me, I knew that this was a final moment, right? When he does his black flash, you get the sense of, oh, he's reaching like a penultimate moment for him, right? And when he's fighting Yuji and Todo at the end of the previous episode, the way that the voice actor does such an incredible job at showing how unhinged he is, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the peak of where his character can really go. Because if you were to try to bring it back down, that would feel super anticlimactic.
Yeah.
That's not something everyone can always do, which is why, like, when we've watched certain animations, or when we watched live adaptations, or when we watch the English dubbed version, things don't always feel right. And that, I think, is a talent that I feel like a lot of people underestimate, how important it is to have a skilled voice actor who knows how to invoke not just the emotion of the character, but to pull you into the scene so that it builds suspense and tension. Because the way that he was acting in that previous episode, I was like, oh, it's building up to a very important moment. And you don't always do that if you don't have the right voice actor.
Yeah. I think after you're saying that, I don't think Geto's gonna save him after you just said that, because I
think he's done.
There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go from here. You reached your moment of full self-discovery, and then you were ripped away from that, and you've now reached rock bottom. It's nowhere else. The cycle is complete.
This was another thing that I'll say. I know we've talked about the pacing of the show so far. Shibuya arc for this show has done a really good job of making you fall in love with characters that did not get the same level of screen time as like Yuji, Gojo, and Megami. Because what they did with Mekamaru and Miwa, we got like 3 scenes, and that felt like a full-on love story. You know what I mean? It was like the first few minutes of like Up.
Yeah.
Where like you get a complete arc with these 2 people, and there's barely any screen time, but you felt the weight of that. Same thing. I mean, we had scenes with Nanami before, but this, I felt so much for him in those moments. And that I felt the weight of the relationship with Yuji and Nanami a lot more than the previous episodes and seasons. I mean, Nabara, we had moments where, you know, she's fighting Haruto, and the scenes that we get with her backstory.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. I mean, we talked about how it didn't feel like Nabara had enough screen time, and so if they were going to offer, we probably wouldn't feel as much. And they proved us wrong with what they did in that episode. I
felt very sad.
Yeah, it's so impressive.
And they ground all of it in Yuji. You feel very sad for the loss of the character, but you really feel sad for Yuji's loss.
Yes.
It's Yuji's emotional response to what's happening that makes you feel the weight of what we just lost.
I've been seeing these Fortnite memes, because you know how like they put JJK in the item shop, you could buy these characters, and when you first shoot a person and they lose all their health, they crawl on the ground, they sort of like quote unquote bleed out, and you have time to revive your teammates. And so you had this person crawling on the ground, and someone was Yuji, and it's kind of like a Darth Vader walk where he walks slowly towards the person. So you had Yuji doing that, like they're trying to like
reenact.
Yeah, and I was like, why? This is like a viral thing. I've seen so many videos and like, oh,
I get it.
I get it now. This is the noob life of a non-manga reader. I will say though, when that credit hit, I was like, should I buy it? Should I buy it? Should I buy the manga? And it's like, no, I won't do it. Maybe after the season's done, but I was so tempted.
The credits always hit too soon. Always, every time. I'm never ready. I'm never ready for them.
I need people to realize how trash Bob Iger is. He comes out with some statements about, you know, they're gonna peel back with all of the live adaptations and the sequels and the spin-offs and, you know, whatever. But then he makes this statement that had a lot of BIPOC and queer people that were like, what does he mean by that? Bob Iger says company movies have been too focused on messaging and less on entertainment and quality. Creators have lost sight on what their number one objective needs to be. We have to entertain first. It's not about messages. And I would just want to sort of add here, when you say messages, what are you talking about here, Bob? Because there's a couple of things that I think just feels really gross about that statement. The first, you are categorically false. Some of your biggest hits have been movies about underrepresented people that have had messages. I'm not even talking about like Black Panther or Shang-Chi. We can talk about Coco, right? Huge hit. We've talked about a little bit about this before of like, we saw an influx of a lot of companies doing things to bring representation to their films. And a lot of people were like, well, if they're just doing it just to make money off of people of color, is that a problem? And I always was concerned about that because there will be a moment where the pendulum swings, which we're kind of seeing in our country right now. The company is not doing well financially. And the first thing they think of pulling back on is about minority representation. Like that's the vibe I get.
The implication.
Mm-hmm. Right. It feels like you're trying to cater to this anti-woke crowd, thinking that you can like bring them back into watching your Disney affiliated content and letting them know there won't be so much wokeness in our movies anymore, so you can bring your money back to our company. You're putting yourself in a hole here because you're feeding into that narrative of like wokeness is not quote unquote profitable, which is just not true.
And I also do not like the implication that these groups of people do not want messaging. They want messaging in their films too. It's just not this type of messaging. What they're asking for is not a film that says nothing. They want a film that says something, and they want a film that says something to them. So you're not going to be, if to appeal to that crowd, you're not moving away from messaging and towards entertainment. You're just changing your message.
Yeah. All right. I think that does it for tonight. We want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you all next time. Peace out, everyone.